Hello, this is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and I hope you guys enjoyed your 4th of July weekend. I took a long weekend, but back here today talking about a lot of people upset with Biden. Deborah Messing, who's on Will and Grace, and I never watched Will and Grace. I did watch NBC's Smash for a little bit. She was on there. Upset on a White House call, which is really interesting because it just lets you know how plugged in these celebrities are to like the White House agenda and how much they care about these people and how intertwined they are, which we'll dive into deeper when we get to that segment. But it's just really fascinating. Also want to talk about this story that someone did an observation of a thread with a parent who posted how much of an ally they were, and their kids were reading these trans books. And then not even like a month later, they're like, oh, my kid kind of thinks they're a boy. I don't think they really are a boy, but what do I do? Because my husband or ex-husband or ex or her father or whatever doesn't like all this stuff, and now they think that I'm influencing them, and that's why they have this. So it's a really interesting thread, and it speaks to a lot of things I've been talking about lately. So we're going to be talking about that, as well as some nasty tweets over the weekend about different things from some celebrities. They've been coming out the woodwork about the abortion topic. Particularly Mark Hamill had a really, really egregious one that I want to focus on because I do see that there's just a lot of animosity about adoption, even though it's like the first thing people will ask you about if you're pro-life. They'll say, how many kids have you fostered? How many kids have you adopted? And etc. But when people are like, I want to adopt your baby, now they're like acting like you are the Joker or something creepy. So before we jump into all those things, I want to encourage you guys to please go to blacktnews.com, check out different articles that I have. I have a really, really, really good one that I want to encourage you all to look at and to read. It's what to the 4th of July is the unborn, and it mirrors off of Frederick Douglass's speech that he gave 170 years ago. What to the 4th of July is a slave. So it's not a Bash America speech. It was just a speech at the time to challenge them to fight against the injustice of slavery. So a lot of people get really frustrated when you compare slavery to abortion, and it's obviously they're not the same thing. But an interesting thing that Frederick Douglass did in that speech is that he compared the tyranny of the British to the plight of slavery. Do I think that he thought they were the same thing? No, but he was saying that this is an injustice. Obviously, in hindsight, we know that that was a very bad thing, that the British were in the wrong. But at the time, it was very controversial. It was very hard to stick up and do the right thing. Brave men came together and they did the right thing. So he was trying to convince people, rally people together to do the right thing when it came to ending slavery. And so I've made a similar argument using some of the arguments that he made in his speech. So it's a good one to share. It's got a lot of great talking points in it, especially if you're pro-life. And if you are pro-choice, I challenge you to read it. Maybe it'll change your mind. But you can read that at blacktnews.com. I got other great content on there. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Really, really appreciate the support of you guys. You guys can also check out different merchandise that we have at blacktnews.com. Like these are look, people are looking at these right now. The Life Wins and the Roe and Casey aborted shirts. You guys can pick those up. Also got other goodies that you guys can get, like the You Are Not That Special mugs. People need these all the time, it appears. And also got some other stuff like Club XX and all kinds of different forms, hoodies, crop hoodies, t-shirt dresses, t-shirts, etc., and other kind of stuff. You Are Not That Special got that in a shirt. Got the cool Frederick Douglass shirt with the quote from this speech: "The Constitution is a glorious liberty document." So you guys can check that kind of stuff out at the website. So let's go ahead and jump into the news of the day, you guys know that I like to start with something funny. And I got something that's interesting. So this comes from like Right to Bear memes. If you're not following their Twitter page, you're really missing out. But you, you, you might be wondering what the heck that is. So there was a state senator from Rhode Island who, for their 4th of July, they decided to do a vote for me twerk video, like upside down in the sand. And so, so obviously they superimposed her in DC with the president and the vice president looking on with their spouses. So yeah, this is a hot mess. This lady's a hot mess. She's like, just because I'm elected, I can't have fun, and she thinks people. She's not apologizing. She's doubling down. She's playing the victim. She's like, these people don't care about policies. They just want to attack young, passionate people, and she thinks, despite being like an egregious sort of personality, that it's not going to hinder her chances getting reelected, because I guess she's pretty vulgar and stuff when she got elected the first time. But I'm pretty sure I've run into her tweets before, because I think I was watching Tucker talk about it a little bit, and he there was some stuff about how she was very excited to teach kids about, is I think the best day of her life, teaching kids about sexual stuff, or sexual sort of sex education things, but this sounded more perverse than that. And I had posted it on my Facebook page, and some people got really mad at me. Not people who normally follow me, but I'm sure just trolls who came on the page and via the tweet and started arguing with me about why her posts were fine. I'm like, no, this is weird. And it's weird to just be an elected official and twerking. First of all, doing that kind of stuff in public is not, I wouldn't think that was appropriate for a normal person. And you could think I'm a prude. I am a prude, so there's that. I'm not gonna lie to you. I just wouldn't think that would be appropriate, especially if there's people around children, for one. But to put your butt cheeks like that just on like a public sphere as a public figure, those are public butt cheeks, you know. So people are a hot mess today. People are really, really a hot mess. But if she's in a district where it is just plus dim, she's probably right, and it probably won't matter, and she'll probably be reelected. But she's a state senator, not a U.S. Senator up in Washington. So at least we have that to be thankful for. But guys, that's embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing. So just really, really amazing. And her name is, just so you have it, Democrat, Rhode Island State Senator, 28 years old enough to know better, defends video of her twerking upside down and claims haters don't care about policy and want to attack a young, energetic person filled with joy. So that is Senator Tiara Mack. Yeah. I wanted to spare you guys and not actually play her twerking video. So if you were that curious, you can go ahead and look it up. But I will not violate you like that today. So let's move on talking about Joe Biden. So the White House is well, there was a report from CNN that after the Supreme Court setbacks, and some people were very upset. So specifically, it says Deborah Messing was fed up. The former Will and Grace star was among dozens of celebrity Democratic supporters and activists who joined a call with the White House aides last Monday to discuss the Supreme Court overturning of Roe v. Wade. So before I jump into it, as there was tweets going out about Charlize Theron had some tweets, and other people had tweets, and someone had noted, I don't remember whose page I was on, but they're like, it sure is interesting how these celebrities are coming out talking about it. And they're clearly talking about, and it's a big thing. Everybody's pretty much talking about it. And by the way, if people who don't know a lot about the topic don't want to interject, that's fine. I do want people to be engaged with this issue, and I would prefer if everyone is pro-life. I know everyone is not, but a good friend of mine, this is Savvy, she did reach a million followers on TikTok recently. She told people, like, if you feel pressured to talk about this subject as a content creator, you don't have to do that. Like, protect your brand, protect your name, protect all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of people who just don't know a lot about the topic, and they make it known the way they talk about certain things that they're not very educated on it. Now, you don't need an education, like, it's not like when you go to Cedar Point and you want to get on a roller coaster and you have to pass a certain, like, requirement before you can interject about something. But I just don't understand why so many people want to interject from a place of pure ignorance. Like, if you're asking questions, that's one thing, but people are so passionately ignorant that it's really, really ridiculous. So anyway, a lot of celebrities are interjecting, and someone noted, like, it's interesting that so many people are interjecting like this, almost like it's coordinated. And I'm like, that's an interesting thought. It sounds a bit conspiratorial, but that's interesting, not impossible. So I don't think it was impossible, and they're probably right on the money. Because the first time I read this story, I did not really catch on to the dozens of celebrity Democrat supporters. So all these, we know that the White House likes to utilize celebrities to get their point across. And not just the White House, but political movements in general. I remember Charlemagne was talking about the COVID vaccine, and he didn't like how they were getting everyone together to push that. And he's like, other stuff goes down and they're silent on it, but something like the vaccine, you want everyone to get together and to use, like, my name and stuff to push it. He's like, no, I'm cool. I'm not good with that. But so it's not unheard of that people will use celebrities to push certain things. But Matthew McConaughey was in the White House not too long ago, and apparently he got some legislation actually moved. It wasn't legislation I think they'll do a lot in the grand scheme of things, as far as, like, it won't do anything in preventing mass shootings. It did a lot to just tick off Republicans who saw other Republicans cave, but I don't think it's going to save any lives. But they got something passed. Biden can say he passed something, which, by the way, there was a shooting a 4th of July in Illinois, and it looks like they were like an Antifa kind of person. And I don't know in the long run what we can do a lot about with these crazy people, because there does seem to be an element of social contagion, that a lot of these people do want attention. And the more that we talk about it and their motives and post their pictures and say their names, there's going to be more people who are going to be willing to do that to get their point across, especially in the long run, if they don't value their own lives. You know, how you're going to value other people's lives if you don't value your own life. So we have a deep rot in our society. And as far as this goes with the social contagion of this particular thing, as long as people want to rush to use all this stuff as some kind of political cudgel, we're not going to stop it, because people on the left are like, is this a crazy white supremacist that we can blame this on the Republicans? And the right's like waiting for information to be like, oh, is what, you know, we could, it has nothing to do with our guns, and that was a crazy, what, you know, people are waiting on both sides. I'm not saying that it's a vast thing on the right or left, particularly not a vast thing on the right. I want to stick up for the right, I guess. But it's enough of it goes on, especially in the media. It doesn't matter that if everyday citizens aren't doing it. People like Twitter heads, verified checkmark folks, and people who run media are waiting to run with certain media. So we're going to continue making the issue worse, especially if we do not work on the moral rot that we have to address in communities, in churches and schools, with our neighbors, our friends, and our families. So it's going to continue. And I don't know if there's any gun control measure in the world that will actually end that. But back to this particular thing with Roe v. Wade and the celebrities, you got all these people together. They are getting talking points. They are having discussions, but they are very upset at Joe Biden because they didn't protect the institution of abortion that they felt was so precious. The mood was fatalistic, according to 3 people on the call, which was also co-organized by the advocacy group Build Back Better Together. Messing said she'd gotten Joe Biden elected and wanted to know why she was being asked to do anything at all. Such an entitled attitude. I got you elected. Why are you asking me to do anything more? I did my part. So, okay. Yelling that there didn't even seem to be a point in voting. Others wondered why the call was happening. That afternoon, participants received a follow-up email with a list of basic talking points and suggestions of Biden's speech clips for them to share on TikTok. So this is all very interesting how they organize and coordinate all of these things together, right? Like it's not by accident that they share certain things, that they tweet certain things. You know, Republicans, we'd get like certain talking points from like local within like party leadership locally to say out to activists and other groups, and then the RNC would put out different stuff. Obviously the Democrats do the same thing, but it's interesting that they have all these public figures that people look up to. You shouldn't really look up to celebrities and stuff. You should be very careful with who you idolize, but they're getting these lists of talking points. They're not average people just sharing their opinions. They are also political activists, just like, AOC and other people they're officials, but they're political in nature. So you can't just trust that someone is tweeting something just because that is their voice, that is their opinion. To Deborah Messing's point, I really think that's interesting that these people feel that they shouldn't that there's no point to voting. I don't like the idea of people feeling like that, especially when people were talking about that when that was more like a election fraud discussion, because people at the end of the day do need to vote, but I don't want idiots voting, I suppose. So but that's a sad way to feel. So one thing people were so concerned about Roe v. Wade being overturned is that they're like, oh, this is going to drive people out to the polls. But when people can feel angry when something happens, or people can feel defeated, and then anger can drive people out to the polls. Like there was a lot of people indignant about the Kavanaugh situation when they slandered him, made it seem like he was some kind of gang chain rapist and all kinds of other crazy stuff that didn't pan out, obviously. People push back against that. We could have had a bigger sort of wipeout in the House and so on, if not for what happened there. So sometimes people can get angry and push back. People were hoping that Roe v. Wade being overturned would be something that would push people out to the polls in order to defend abortion. But you're seeing that people are very, very upset and feel defeated, like there is nothing that they can do, and voting actually won't do anything. Now, just because you lose sometimes doesn't mean that there's no point to voting. And by the way, your TikToking, your illegal protest in front of homes, all the things that these people were doing to try to sway the Supreme Court, that's not how our Supreme Court is supposed to work. They're supposed to look at, the Constitution, interpret laws and other stuff like that. And Roe v. Wade, people have acknowledged for a very long time, it was not constitutional. And people didn't want it to go because they wanted to protect the institution of abortion. If there's not some kind of federally protected law or something at this point, or things in place to protect the trigger laws and et cetera, that's really on the legislative bodies and the voters, and not putting that pressure before. The Supreme Court did the right thing. And I can understand people being upset, but they did the right thing. As far as states that are red getting rid of abortion, that's part of federalism, right? Some places would enact laws that their people agreed to, and you're not have a red state like, well, and a lot of people are going to try to move into Texas and change it, but at this point in time, Texas is not California, New York is not Florida, and you have Newsom and trying to do different ads to get people to move from Florida to California. And if you're a freedom loving individual, you're not going to do that. But I'm sure Florida would be glad to lose some liberals to California. And then some of the liberals who understand that California is so awful will continue moving out to escape liberalism. Hopefully they don't take it with them on the way. But we do have other fights in other states, like in Michigan right now, that we do have abortion ban on the books, but our governor and attorney general want to like stop that by some pretty nefarious means, really. So we still have lots of battles. The fight's not over for the pro-life movement, but the pro-choice movement's going to find really a lot of difficulty because they are so passionate about the extreme that it's going to turn off a lot of people who were just like, who are pro-choice for just the purpose of being supportive, you know, like, hey, that is a woman's choice. But when you're like making arguments that you want to have abortions because in case you have a one night stand, and yes, I've had arguments with people who've used the argument that women should be able to have abortions because, hey, it's not a woman's fault if she has a one night stand and things happen and she gets pregnant. I'm not kidding you. They took their A game to that debate. Yeah. I'm not kidding you. So that's not the argument that everyone's going to use when they defend abortion. A lot of them like to go to the extreme and the rare. But if people, you're like, get involved, get informed, and people start looking up statistics and data, and they're like, you know what, these things I was very sympathetic towards are actually on the rarer side. So I feel like I've been lied to, and a lot of people have been lied to. And the abortion lobby is all about manipulation. Even the phrases that they use, my body, my choice, is another body, guys. You did make choices. That's how you ended up pregnant. Like, the reproductive rights. Yeah, you already reproduced. That's why there's a baby in there. It's all about manipulation. And so I think in the long run, they're not going to be able to continue their case as strongly as they wanted to. And the real tragedy for them with Roe v. Wade being overturned is that they actually have to campaign on what they believe, and what they believe is pretty heinous. So I saw this great TikTok last night, and someone was in my feed had found it and was just sharing it. That's how it ended up in my algorithm. But it was a leftist who was just so angry at Nancy Pelosi for daring to ask for money, because they're like, you people are rich. You have all this money. You barely sent a few stimulus checks. We don't have anything, but you still want money, but you keep losing. People are frustrated when their team loses. Now, sometimes when you win so much, as Trump said, you're going to get tired of winning. Sometimes people can kind of fall back and not be so enthused to go back to the polls. But sometimes losing, especially losing like this when they're grieving, a lot of people are kind of more grieving than they are angry. There are people who are angry, but it's not an issue that is many people are as passionate as you think. You can take a poll and ask people, hey, do you support a woman's right to choose? Which that's how they'll frame it. They won't say, hey, do you support abortion? People who are pro-choice don't even like that phrasing. That's why they say they're pro-choice, because they don't like it themselves, but they want to support a woman's choice to do that. So it's easy in some regard to get the results that you want on a poll if you ask questions in the right sort of way. But if you have to really explain what goes down and nail down really, 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 really early time frames when abortion has to happen, you're going to end up getting rid of abortion in a lot of places. Now, people might say like 15 weeks. 15 weeks is way too late. Most abortions happen 15 weeks and earlier. So, but people be really mad about like 6 weeks, for example, or 4 weeks, because or as soon as a heartbeat is detected, or cardiovascular activity, whatever you want to call it. Because basically by then, when you find out that you're pregnant, you couldn't basically have the abortion. So Democrats are going to keep running into some trouble. And that's another reason, I'm just talking about this before I move on. Another reason why I was so annoyed with the Republicans compromising on the package with the Democrats funding states that had red flag laws. That wasn't the only thing in it. I don't remember the name of the bill, but it happened like 2 weeks ago. It is, why would you give them a win? Like, it really wasn't going to do anything in the grand scheme of things as far as protecting people. By the way, there was the shooter in Illinois who was known to the police, who the police actually like confiscated his knives and other stuff because he was a crazy person and threatened to kill people. But he still, the red flag laws still did not stop him from doing what he did. So there's lots of questions to be had. It's always frustrating when you find out that people were known to law enforcement and stuff still happened. But anyway, the Republicans went along with the red flag bill and so on. And so they really, really ticked off their base. And they gave Biden a win. And a lot of things in there aren't really going to do anything in the grand scheme of things about saving lives. So, as some kind of strategy, it didn't make sense to me, especially if the strategy for McConnell was, we're going to do this so we can take off like gun discussions off the table for elections. But every time there's a new sort of tragedy, something that people want to highlight in the news, they will just reshift the conversation back to the same one we've been having. So Republicans are dumb, at least in that regard. At least in that regard. So interesting article from CNN. Interesting that the White House is so obsessed with TikTok, so obsessed with with these platforms, so obsessed with I don't know, that they think they can just manipulate the youth and everyone with these celebrities, which in a lot of regard they can, which is sad. But we're being governed by TikTok and Twitter and celebrities versus people coming in trying to actually solve problems. And this isn't the only sort of article that we've seen from the White House where people were like very concerned about the messaging rather than actually tackling something. Now, I don't want Biden to fix, abortion nationwide. It's a very, very low priority thing as far as like, I think the average day voter is. And that's another problem for the Democrats too, right? That people are more concerned about putting gas in their cars and other stuff like that. And it's being really, really expensive, which, by the way, Biden just denied another lease like a week ago. So they don't plan on really solving this problem, but they will continue to blame others for the problems that they cannot solve. I'm going to move on because this is a really, really, really interesting story. So a journalist found a thread, and it's called "Breaking the Spell of Social Justice." Christina Buttons and Colin Wright put it together. So they've been following, I guess, this thread of like different allies. So they highlighted this one thread from this mother who posted this in December. My daughter, 7, was extremely excited to receive these books for Christmas, and I couldn't have been more proud. #allies, be the change. So this is what she put out. And so a month later, she said, in need of a little advice. My daughter, 7 years old, just came to me and said she thinks she wants to be a boy. Now, we are strong LGBTQIA plus allies and have always taught her that there is absolutely nothing wrong with these feelings. But I honestly don't think that she is a boy inside. I want to handle this conversation in a healthy way. I do not want to invalidate her feelings or make her feel any shame. She was always a very girly girl. Favorite color has always been pink, loved dresses and makeup, crushes on boys, etc. Recently, the boy she was crushing on at the beginning of the year has accepted her into his circle more. She likes to play Roblox, so they have bonded over that. Suddenly, her favorite color changed to blue, and she's interested in basketball, etc. She also mentioned that she had a crush on a girl she plays Roblox with, but has never met. And we had a discussion about bisexuality because she previously only had crushes on boys. Her dad is very anti LGBTQIA and believes that my teaching her to be an ally would only create problems. So I'm a tad insecure that I've done something to confuse my kid. So this is really interesting. Interesting also that it came across my page at this time because I've been talking a lot about Disney and Baymax. So Baymax is a healthcare robot, and so they did a series, a spinoff of Big Hero 6. And so in this film, well, in the at least in the clip that I've seen, he went to the store to pick up some pads, and there's some very helpful customers, which I didn't seem very realistic to me because when I'm going in the pad section, I always get turned around on the wrong side, and you see the aisle, and you're like, oh, those are where the pads are down in the pharmacy section, and nope, that's not where the pads are. That's where the adult stuff is, where Biden would need to shop, and you're like, where are these darn stuff? And then you like go like 2-3 aisles over in the same section, and then you find what you need, and that's like my experience. No one is there, no one to help you, but no, everyone's like, I use these, and so there's one person with who's masculine presenting who says, I always use the one with wings. And this person has a t-shirt on, which is the trans t-shirt with the pink and the blue and the white. So they obviously want you to know this person is trans, and they're presenting the idea that this is a man, and this is a man who uses pads. So they didn't want it to go over your head. Obviously, that's why they put her in the shirt. But if a kid asked, like, parents were upset that this was even in the film at all, because it's PG, which is parental guidance. But if you're like 8 and older or something, I think it's like the age range of like PG. You might be like, I wasn't quite ready for that conversation. And so there's some people maybe who have, because kids are kind of, there are kids who can get it like at 9 and stuff. I think I started when I was like 12, TMI, I guess, but it's a conversation we're having. And some people find it gross for your boy. That's probably not the thing that you really want to see in there. And I think it was kind of more written for virtue signaling of older viewers, but also to peek and poke different things in your kids' brains. And so I would point out that, hey, Disney does have an agenda, and people would be like, oh, Disney has an agenda. I'm like, Disney literally has said they have a not so secretly gay agenda. There's people who have executives in Disney who have children, just a alarmingly high ratio of people who they're raising who are LGBT. I don't know what's up with the gene pool there, but it seems like it's kind of like condition social engineering there. But they want to make sure that there is like a quota filled with a particular amount of LGBT characters and people. And Disney has said they want to fight against the parental rights and education bill. So there is an agenda. You can agree with the agenda, but just FYI, there is an agenda. There's no point in like stating that there's not. So people have argued with me, reported my videos. They keep getting restored, but it's a topic. This is a topic on TikTok that's really, really hard to go through. Someone did a reply video to me, and I don't even know how I'm going to reply to them, because of the way that I want to reply, I know it's going to get reported. It might get banned, but the video itself, not me. But it's frustrating that you can't even have conversations with people and feel free to have free speech without being targeted. This weekend on TikTok, Dave Rubin got suspended for talking about how Jordan Peterson was suspended. Jordan Peterson had some kind of tweet about Ellen Page, who is now Elliot, changed her name, and and Ellen Page had trended, and BuzzFeed did an article about it, and TikTok actually had to apologize to itself and everyone because they broke their own rules about dead naming. Dead naming is when you use the real name or the original name of someone who's trans, who's transitioned and has a different name. You're dead naming them. So you can't even acknowledge that Ellen Page is a star of Juno, a movie where a teenager got knocked up. You have to just, Ellen's always been Elliot. It's so ridiculous. And last week we talked about how in Canada there was a missing woman, and they're trying to find her for her safety. And this was the missing woman right here. This is the missing woman. If you're trying to find a woman, is this what, would you say that this was a woman if you were really serious about finding her? I'm not saying they don't want to save this person's life, but why are you wasting time trying to respect like pronouns and whatnot when people would not read the description of person with a beard, scruffy, and all this kind of stuff, and then see this picture and think that was a missing woman? We're just living in a really strange world, and to pretend there aren't consequences to this is ridiculous. So back to this mother here who wanted to be an ally and got these books, Jack Not Jackie, Mary Wears What She Wants, like these pro-trans books for kids. And a month later, she needs advice because her daughter was 7, and so she's an ally, but she just does not, she knows her child, and she's just doesn't think that she's actually trans. And her father is against a lot of this stuff and thinks that the mother is putting this all in the kid's head. And now she feels guilt because there might be something to what the father was saying. And by the way, a lot of stuff that people are looking at a kid and trying to assess whether they're really a boy or whatnot is based on stereotypes. Because she's like, but she liked pink before and now it's blue. Yeah, well, I'm sure she likes the color blue now because the boy that she liked blue. And, you know, that's not so strange. And what, she likes a girl that she's never seen before, and she's 7. Like, who? This drama is too much. It's just too much for a 7-year-old. What kind of stuff are you introducing into their lives? Okay, so in the article that mentioned these threads, they also had different things that people said in response. So in this big group, there were lots of people who were saying that she needed to affirm her child that she's a boy. And I want to show you this moderator comment. There are lots of comments, but this comment from a moderator was just wackadoodle. To be honest with you, I don't know that you should be the one having the conversations with her since you do not actually believe her. I think she needs a gender therapist / specialist here to talk with her and hear her out instead. We'll read the rest, but that's wackadoodle. You have someone who's saying that the mother of the child should not be having conversations with the child because she doesn't believe her. Kids don't know what they want in life. That's just a fact. It's just a fact. When I was a kid, my dad told me that when we go to heaven, we'd have powers like the X-Men. And then there's the hype of the da-na-na-na-na, like the big cartoon, that everyone sort of thinks of when they think X-Men. And I asked my dad to kill me. Now, obviously, he didn't do that, and that was a bad idea, and he had explained why it was a bad idea and why he wasn't going to do that and everything, but that's what I wanted. I wanted to go to heaven, and I wanted to have powers like the X-Men. Not a bad dream for a kid, but... but you just don't do everything that your kid tells you to do. This thread is literally the plot to Johnny the Walrus. If you're not aware what Johnny the Walrus is, that is Matt Walsh's book. And I've seen Sam Lux is a YouTuber, and I actually did a video responding to Sam Lux's response to Matt Walsh. I think I did that. I think that's what happened. Yeah, I know we watched it some time ago. And to me, it seems funny that people don't understand. It is a children's book, but the point of the book is to mock the parents who are like, oh my gosh, my so the plot of the book is that there's this mother, she sees her kid playing, like pretending like they're walrus, and she like takes some pictures and posts on like, haha, my kid's so great. And then all these mothers are like, what's wrong with you, you bigot? Your kid is actually a walrus. And she's like, oh shoot. And then she's like, okay, well, I gotta take my kid to get, checked out, and we got to have surgery to try to fashion them into a walrus. We got to put paint on them. We got to give them bugs or whatever worms or whatever the crap that walruses eat. That is a plot to Johnny the Walrus. This is amazing, like in a really, really god awful way. So let's go back to this moderator comment. So this moderator thinks that she shouldn't even be like having conversation. She's like, I can understand that you are insecure because the position it puts you in. If your child does happen to be transgender, her dad probably will blame you. But this is also why you need a therapist too. Please don't have conversations with her over it when you don't believe her, because it will make things skewed. You need a more neutral perspective. So how a gender therapist, it will have a neutral perspective. These people, like, I'm not saying there aren't good people who want to do the right thing by these kids, but there's a lot of people who are just affirming with these conclusions when people come in with these self-diagnoses. And there's a lot of money involved. Big Pharma is really involved with these people transitioning. I think there's kind of more dire things going on as well, as far as like social engineering for the purposes of cultural Marxism and all that other kind of stuff that I do not have time to jump into today. But yeah, I just wouldn't be like, yeah, just go to a gender therapist because they're going to be the most neutral party, period. You know what? When you're a parent, you need to protect your kids. That's the first priority, that you need to protect your kids and you need to do right by your kids. And just because your kids say something doesn't mean that you're right. They're right. You can listen to your kids and try to understand where they're coming from and understand why they're saying the things that they're saying, but that doesn't mean that they're right with the conclusion that they have. There could be a source to why they're saying these things. And unfortunately, part of the source is this. Part of the source is this. Part of the source is listening to these friends, that getting advice from these wicked people that would say that, hey, as a mother, you should back out because you're not just listening to your 7-year-old as she's telling you these things about her life. So yes, she is causing some problems. And I'm sure she's probably also making life hell for the father, who's trying to also stick up for his child. And now they got a confused kid. Please don't have conversations with her over it when you don't believe her, because it will make things skewed. You need a more neutral perspective. Your child may just be exploring her option, or as many of us here will tell you, we knew we were trans when we were even before her age in many cases. So don't encourage her, but if she says she wants to be called something else, I'd say do it. Let her tell you what she wants. This is literally the plot. Literally the plot to Johnny the Walrus. Literally the plot to Johnny the Walrus. I hope Matt sees that. I just tweeted at him. I'm like, this is literally the plot to your book. And people who are mad about his book do not understand that some stuff in it is like the true moral of the story is going to go over the heads of the children, because it's more of a social commentary on the parents. You got to protect these kids. And a lot of people who have questions about their gender will grow out of it if you do not introduce this kind of garbage to them. But if you introduce this idea that, hey, when you were born, you weren't actually born a girl, like, people just assume that about you. People assume that about you, and you may discover that the whole time you were somebody else. So when people talk about something like Baymax and that they need representation in that TV show or other TV shows, I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. I understand why everyone wants representation, but you can be represented without being so on the nose. There are characters that have been different races and species and ethnicities or genders that which there's only two, but like they've been male or whatever, that I've still been able to relate to because of their journeys that they go through. The story is important. I sometimes that vessel the story is told through is important, especially if it relates to how the actual plot of the story. Um, but for example, sometimes when I watch Beauty and the Beast, there was a time in my life when I just needed like a change, and there's the reprise of the Belle song when she's like, "I want to venture in the great world somewhere." I related that to so hard. I related to it so hard. I related to Seymour watching Little Shop of Horrors when he would sing about Skid Row. I would relate to that. I'd sing that song with tears in my eyes. Like, so you can relate to things on different levels. She didn't need to be a Black woman for me to relate to that feeling of wanting something bigger in life. You know, I know people. I heard a story about someone who was autistic and related to Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy because how literally he took things. I have a friend who had a heart issue, and they had like a pacemaker or something malfunctioned and shocked her, and it got her so afraid she never wanted to leave the house again. And someone finally convinced her to leave her house, and guess what movie was playing? Iron Man. And so she ended up getting an arc reactor tattooed on her chest. So people can relate to people without it being so on the nose. But as far as everyone needs to be represented, would you want bulimia positively represented in a children's cartoon, or anorexia, or kids cutting themselves? No, I think there's some harmful things that you don't need to introduce to kids. And there is a social contagion when it comes to gender identity and ideology that I think that should not be introduced to kids, period. I do know that there are people with gender dysphoria, but there's a difference between normalizing something versus destigmatizing something. I want these people to be treated with respect and dignity. However, they are being used as a political cudgel for really, I don't know, nefarious purposes. How the Biden administration has really said, if you love your kids, you'll affirm them. That's not how you're going to treat everyone. Just saying like, oh, Johnny thinks that he's a walrus, so let's make him a walrus. That's not the case for everybody. And there's more people finding out that they've transitioned and it's been a big mistake. And people say that's a very low percentage of people regret their transition. There's a study out of, I think it's Sweden, where they did a period over like 30 years of people doing sex changes and saying that people are still suicidal and they don't work because you can't change your sex. At the end of the day, you need to find out what is making you have this dysphoria and try to solve it that way. But people who transition, we say the word transition, but you can't transition because you're not changing into anything. You'll never be able to reach that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You will always be who you were born as. I don't identify as a woman. I am a woman, and not because my favorite color is pink. It is blue. My favorite color is blue. And the only time when it was yellow was when I was influenced by Power Rangers because I liked Trini. I liked Trini. That was my Power Ranger. Other than that, my favorite color has always been blue. And liking blue doesn't make me a boy. How when people say that kids are trans, how can you possibly know? How can you possibly know that? How can you possibly know that? You will ask them stereotypical questions and you will get stereotypical answers. If you ask a little girl, what does it mean to be a girl? What does it mean to be a boy? They won't have a good answer. You can't even ask an adult what a woman is nowadays and they'll have an answer. We live in a ludicrous society and we are doing irreversible damage to our children. And we have these people clapping along like seals and shaming parents who are concerned. And it is sick. Last thing I would like to talk about is this tweet from Mark Hamill. And I'm not going to talk about it long because I don't want to go over it. I think I'm about to be over my time. But Mark Hamill tweeted this. Mark Hamill, he played Luke Skywalker. And he also voiced the Joker. But he said this: we will adopt your baby. So he's comparing the people who say we will adopt your baby as opposed to killing them, because that's the option. To like Harley and Joker, like that's what you look like. These psychopaths who are murderers, by the way. I'm always a little like fascinated and alarmed by the sort of like cultural phenomenon that we have with Joker and Harley Quinn. How many people like to dress up as them and say relationship goals and all that kind of other stuff. I'm like, they are like murderous clown people, you know. So when you're having a debate with pro-choicers, one of the first things they like to say is, how many children have you adopted? And it's a really silly question because there are plenty of people waiting to adopt. And they'll mention foster care, which foster care and adoption aren't really the same thing. When you're fostered, you're like a ward of the state. You're usually removed from some kind of situation. Maybe your parents were drug addicts or something like that. They still have their parental rights, so they have to live in foster home, and a lot of kids in foster care aren't available for adoption. So usually, if you have a newborn, you know, they're going to be adopted straight away. It's like a different sort of system. So people who bring it up may not know a lot about it, and I had to learn about it myself, so I don't begrudge people who don't know, but people who use it as some kind of talking point can at least, you know, learn about something about it. But the point of that argument is to, instead of having the conversations about is it humane or right or wrong to have an abortion and take the life of a child, they shift the conversation to, well, you're not a good person anyway. That's what that is. You know, it's an ad hominem, it's an attack on you. And I've seen people say, I have adopted, and they'll say, well, why haven't you adopted more? So now there's this big kind of shift where like adoption is bad. Adoption is inhumane. People have adoption trauma, which I'm not trying to belittle adoption trauma, but at least you're alive. And you are exercising your right to life every day. So why do you think that you should be able to take away someone else's right to life? Ronald Reagan said, everyone who's pro-choice has obviously already been born. I don't think that's the exact quote. Did you get my drift? You choose to exercise your right to life, regardless of, and I know quite a bit of foster children and adopted children who have had beautiful lives and also like tragic, violent, abusive, sexually abusive lives that have picked themselves up off the ground and made something of themselves, really impressive careers as well, and their own families. And they don't appreciate being used as some kind of talking point in this whole debate. Because when you bring up foster kids in adoption, you're really saying that it would be better if these kids had been killed. And I know that's not the way that I think people are intending for it to come out, but that's what you're saying. But there is an attack on adoption, which I noticed when Amy Coney Barrett brought it up during the Dobbs versus Jackson case. Like, adoption is an option for women who get pregnant and they don't want to be mothers, which Amy Coney Barrett has. She has natural kids and she has kids that she's adopted. There was very straight away an article from the Washington Post talking about why adoption is bad. Even the person who wrote it was adopted. The mother, her natural mother and her adoptive mother, I believe, both believe are pro-life. But the article just kind of reeked of someone wanting so badly to impress her liberal friends so badly. That's what it came off to me when I read it. We went through it at the time. And then there was another article that came out about people who are, they said transracial, I think it was, when someone who was like of a different ethnicity adopted by someone of a different ethnicity. And they're like, these people love me, but they don't understand me. So they're really, really trying to paint adoption in some kind of heinous way. But no one has a perfect life. You can live in a home with two parents that are biologically yours, and your life still not be good, and still deal with sorts of trauma, abuse, and being poor, poverty, all kinds of different stuff. That doesn't mean that your life isn't valuable. So we've reached this point where we're just going to straight up attack adoption now and people willing to adopt. So I think this is really, really gross. But by the way, Luke Skywalker was taken in by his uncle after his father went, genocidal maniac and killed younglings and all this kinds of stuff. So maybe I should find this tweet and talk about Uncle Ben or something, because it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. Because they'll challenge these people and convict these people for not doing enough, and to the people who are willing to stand up and do something, they want to make it seem like they're creepy psychopaths. What kind of world are these people trying to build? Because to me, at that point, it just kind of seems like they really, really, really are interested in protecting the institution of abortion. That it's not about that the women should just be able to kill him, and that's it. It's not about the care of the child. Women should just be able to do it, period. And the people who want to stop it are bad. And that doesn't make any sense to me, other than, I don't know, worshiping a god of death and needing these sacrifices placed at the altar. It doesn't make sense to me why they'd be so passionate. However, if you're Mark Hamill, it might make sense, because there was a story not too long ago that came out about his son, and he impregnated a woman, and he wanted her to get an abortion, and Mark Hamill wanted her to get an abortion. So when was this story? 2016. So in 2016, this is a Daily Mail story. Ex-girlfriend of Mark Hamill's son says Star Wars actor tried to force her to get an abortion. Megan Chin is suing established paternity and collect child support. So after dating 3 months, a 30-year-old who now works as a model, lives in Las Vegas, discovered she was pregnant. She said since then, Nathan and his parents have pressured her to terminate the pregnancy. Mark Hamill told me that I shouldn't bring a child into the world that nobody wants, she told the Post. She added that when she first told Nathan that she was pregnant, he immediately urged her to get an abortion. Chen said she took 2 pills to end the pregnancy, but they didn't work. God's trying to tell you something. God's trying to tell you something. Anyway, she said after that, Nathan said the relationship was over if she didn't get an abortion, and she believes the family thinks she is gold digging. A text message he sent her, seen by the Post, said, "If you keep it, we won't hang out anymore." He also told her that she would get no money from the trust fund and no money from my parents. She said she then met his parents, Mark Hamill, and his wife, Mary Lou York, in London in the spring. It was there that the actor who plays Luke Skywalker in Star Wars films told her that his son is not ready to be a father. And the wife, Mary Lou, also set up an appointment with a specialist in the city to consult on an abortion. She said that she had been expecting to get an ultrasound, and when she realized that it was for an abortion, she refused. So, what a piece of work. So, there's people out here who are pretending that they care so much about the women, but they don't. They don't. They care about their sons being sleazebags and being able to live without any sort of responsibility, accountability. So this tweet from Mark Hamill, there's your context, FYI. There's your context. These are not good people. These are not good people. I'm not saying everyone who's pro-choice isn't a good person, but that's not good people's. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I do have to go, but please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different articles that I have on the website, especially the one I wrote about what is the 4th of July to the unborn, which plays off of Frederick Douglass's famous speech. People don't like parallels between slavery and abortion, but I take some things from his speech. There's a lot of great points in it. So if you are pro-life or if you're pro-choice, whatever the case is, it's a really, really good article to read. And you can go to the website. Please check out different merchandise that we have, like the Goat Hoodie, Goat t-shirts. We got those. We got the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirts. We got the I Am Not the Victim You're Looking For. We got this cool Be Better Not Bitter shirt. That's great. All kinds of good stuff that you guys can check out. If you enjoy what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed. And I'm going to have some good guests on. I'll announce very soon. Stay tuned and see you tomorrow.